So good morning, everyone. And well, it's just past 10:30, and we can begin. So as I said yesterday, that today we start the part about integration, and in particular the Riemann integral. And I think we had talked about this informally at some point, and you might have, I might have even presented this. Do these pictures make some? Does anyone remember having seen this slides before?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So my memory was correct. Okay. So what I'll do is we'll quickly go over this. We will revisit this, and now keep in mind that we have now done a good chunk of things on continuity as well as differentiability of functions, and now we can connect these things to this integration to that. Then I will write down formally the definition, etc. later. But we'll begin by going over what we had earlier seen. Okay. So the we want to look at areas within areas in a for example, we can draw some funny shape like this, and we want to work about what is the area inside this. Okay. So the approach is that if we can at least look at areas of objects which are of this kind, which is bounded by a curve y equal to fx, the line y equal to 0, and then these two lines. So three sides there are straight lines. Ground at the bottom there is a x-axis, and on the left and right there are lines which are parallel to the y-axis, and in between there is some curve, some function which is positive. Okay. And if we can look at the area which is inside these four objects, okay, figure formed by this, then a more general thing, we can divide it into parts of this kind, 1, 2, and 3. 3 parts, all of them where it is between two lines, one straight line and one curve. Okay. So this general problem is first reduced to a problem of this kind, where we have some curve y equal to fx, and we want to look at the area which is enclosed by these 3 straight lines and this curve. Okay. Now, so what you do is you have A to B. You want to look at x equal to A to x equal to B. So the A to B, this part of x-axis, we divide it into k many intervals. So you look at, let's call A to be T0 and B to be Tk, and in between pick up points T1, T2 of dot, dot, dot. Okay. And then T0 to T1, T1 to T2, Tk minus 1 to Tk. These are now k many intervals. Okay. So these points T0, T1, Tk, this is denoted as script P. These together can also be called a partition. partition of A to B. Okay. So this can be called partition, or P itself can be called the partition. There's a so given such a partition, let us look at the following. In each of the intervals, you take the minimum and maximum. And in my curve, I had drawn a continuous function. It may not be continuous, in which case minimum, maximum may not make sense. But if the okay. Because remember, on an interval, a minimum or maximum may not be attained. Infimum and supremum will exist. If there is a point in that interval at which the infimum is attained, then we call that the minimum is attained, and that is the minimum. So this is one question which has been asked in several interviews, especially by for math admission or job interview, where the committee also includes non-mathematicians. So sometimes they say, oh, you guys use infimum and minimum. I have never understood the difference between the two. Can you explain? And if the student cannot explain what is the difference between infimum and minimum, then it goes behind. Doesn't matter how good scores you have, if you can't explain to a non-mathematician what is the difference between infimum and minimum, you lose your credibility. So you should be always remember the difference between infimum and minimum, as well as supremum and maximum. Continuous function on a closed bounded interval in minimum is same as infimum, supremum is same as maximum, because it attains its minima and maximum. But otherwise, they can be distinct. So you can, if you give a general explanation, the person can still ask, can you give me an example which illustrates this? So you should always have an example where minimum is there, but of course infimum is minimum is not there, but infimum is there. Minimum is not attained. So you should have examples. Okay. All right. So right now my curve was continuous, so I wrote minimum, maximum. Otherwise, we have to be careful and call it infimum, maximum, supremum. And then look at this picture. So in every interval, we look at the set of the f of x in that interval and look at the minimum and maximum and draw lines at the minimum point and at the maximum point. So this green lines are the ones at the minimum, and the whatever other color, the other parallel lines are on top, above. So they are corresponding to maximum. And if our given function is continuous, minimum, maximum will be there, and we can draw this. Even otherwise, even if our function is not continuous, as long as it is bounded, infimum and supremum will be attained, and we can draw infimum and supremum. It may look very complicated, but we can define what is infimum and supremum. Okay. Now, so if you look at this is ti t minus 1. Then if you look at the ui times, this is ui, this is I guess vi. No, yeah. So it is clear that ui times ti minus 1, that is the length area of the interval, which is completely inside the area that we are interested in. And ti minus 1 times vi is entirely outside that area. So these are upper and lower bounds as far as x equal to ti minus 1 to x equal to ti is concerned. Let's look at it again. So ui times ti minus 1, and if we take the summation, that will give you a lower bound of the interval. Okay, and same thing we do with vi, where we get upper bound. So this sets the stage for the. So now let us return. We have a function f, we have a partition P, and ui is the infimum and vi is the supremum in that interval, ti to ti plus minus 1. So this summation, we call it LFP, and this is the lower bound of the area of the figure X. And likewise, they have UFP, upper bound. Now, what we can do is, we can define LF to be the supremum of the lower bounds and UF to be the infimum of the upper bounds. And we'll write down a proof, formal proof later, but lower bound is always less than equal to upper bound. If this doesn't work, that means somewhere something has gone wrong in our thinking about lower and upper bounds. Okay, but we will show that this works. So whatever be the function f, LF will be less than equal to UF. And then if the lower bound is equal to the upper bound, that is the area of the figure. This is the idea. And when this happens, we say that f is integrable on AB, and the common value is defined as the integral of f. Okay, so because we had seen it once earlier, today it all seemed, I hope to you also, reasonably easy to digest what we said just now. And now we had gone over this part, but I will, anyway, after formal definition, we are going to do that. That if f is a continuous function on this closed bounded interval a to b, then LF is equal to UF. So every continuous function on the closed bounded interval AB is integrable. And this is definition due to Riemann. So we will
Sir, you should consider the L and U over all partitions, right?
oh yes. So
Okay, sir.
Look at this here. LF is the supremum over all partitions and UF is the infimum over all partitions.
Okay, sir.
So this approach is due to Riemann, and this is what is called, f is said to be Riemann integrable, and this can be called as the Riemann integral. So it's natural that if we are assigning a name to the integral and integrability, it should occur to some of you, at least, if not to all of you, that there must be more to it, more to the story than just this. There must be other notions of integrability. Okay. So indeed, this is the integration is an old problem. Finding areas is an old problem, and there have been attempts by different people to develop a theory about integration, and the suffices to say that if if our function f was continuous function and on a bounded interval, so of course a closed bounded interval continuous function, so function is also bounded, in which case all the notions of integration which have been debated and discussed, they all agree. Okay, and this is the integral. The thing is about what happens when the function is not continuous, or what happens when the function is not bounded, or what if our a to b is an infinite interval. All these things are on one hand useful in some applications, and then various notions may differ. And what if f is not continuous to begin with? What can then happen? Okay. So but we are not going to be doing any other form. Our curriculum is to do the Riemann integral, and this is the way of Riemann that we are going to do. And
hello, sir.
yeah.
Sir, in this case, I mean, in the general case where we discuss this technique of Riemann integrability, here we are considering the function not necessarily to be continuous, right?
No, no.
So that's why we are considering the supremum and infimum
Yes.
instead of maximum and minimum, right?
Yes.
Okay, sir.
Yes. Because as I said, if we are only going to deal with continuous functions f, then the thing is fairly easy. All notions agree and there's not much to do. But there are lots of examples of interest where the function may not be continuous.
Sir, to prove that a function is integrable, we should prove that LF equal to UF for some partition of it.
No, you have to show no for any partition the integrals may not be, the LF UF may not be equal.
Okay, sir. So if you have to prove that a function is integrable, should we prove that LF equal to UF for some partition? Okay.
No, but some partition you will not be able to show that they are equal for any partition. Let's take,
because LF is always less than or equal to.
Let's take the simplest of the case, fx equal to x. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So no matter what partitions you take, the minimum will be always the lower end point, and supremum will be the upper end point, and there will always be difference between LUF and so on.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So the hope of showing equality is only when you take supremums. We'll see sufficient conditions which will be of the following kind. For every epsilon, we should be able to get hold of a partition such that upper bound and lower bound differ by less than epsilon. This we will prove. It's not obvious, but this will be something which we will prove. Because your question was about in an example, how do you go about proving it?
Yes.
To get LF equal to UF, and taking supremum over all partitions and so on sometimes may be fine, but not always so easy to get hold of what will be the supremum. Okay. So this is a good solution. That given you can get that the upper and lower bounds are reasonably close to each other. And if that is so, then we are going to show that if for every epsilon such a P exists, then the LUF, then LF equal to UF.
Okay, sir.
So But now that we are saying it second time, the approach is very natural, okay, of taking upper bounds and lower bounds. And perhaps I may have mentioned the previous time that it is this approach which was used to get the area of a circle and so on and so forth, and the pi and various such things. So geometry, in geometrical way, getting hold of pi was through area of a circle or length of the arc of a circle. And in that, this upper approximating by upper bounds, lower bounds comes in naturally. And that dates back few thousand years, couple of thousand years, when this first started doing such things. Okay. So the so if there are no questions further on this level, it should not be, but if there are none, let me move on and let my blank pages go. So our framework is going to be the following. So here we are not going to allow A or B to be minus infinity and infinity. So this is going to be a closed bounded interval AB. And if for continuous, then it will of course be bounded, but more generally, we are not stopping at continuous functions. We are allowing any function, only saying it is bounded. So that when we take infimums, supremums, they make sense and they are not infinity, minus infinity, and all those things. Okay. So so partition, this whole thing will be we can consider this as a this, or we can say consider this as a set of points. The partition is a set of points, and they are increasing. So T0 less than T1, and T0 is A, Tk is B, and in between there is. Okay, so this will always be a partition. Now, so exactly what I had written there, but I did not, here I have not introduced another notation for this as UI, VI, that's all. So, now, let us make some observations about these partitions. Okay. Firstly, if you take two partitions, let's say you can always take, you can add the points. Suppose this is first and last are A and B, and this is some S0, S1, SM. S0 is A and SM is B. Okay. Then we can generate a partition P such that P1 is contained in P and P2 is also contained in P. P is sometimes called refinement of these two partitions. We can always get one. And what we do is, if a point is there in both of them, you simply take these as sets, take their union, the set of T's and the set of S's, take their union as a set. Now, when you take union as set, if a point occurs two times, in the union it occurs exactly once. You don't care whether a same point is appearing on both sides. So that is the notion of union of two sets. So you take union of these two sets, and now the smallest will be A, the largest will be B, and in between arrange them in an increasing order. So let A be this, then because every element is either one of the T's or one of the S's, and each of these satisfies the condition that the first one was A, last one was B, and everything in between was in between. So we get that A is a set, finite set, and lowest point is there, highest point is there, and in between everything is between A and B. Okay, so your Km, so let me take some other variable N. And now we take the refined partition as just the sum of as these elements. Okay. Now,
Sir.
yeah.
Sir, could you repeat what the TIs and SIs are, sir? I didn't catch that fully.
Okay. So, what are TIs and SIs?
Yes, sir.
So we have two partitions of AB. Our interval A to B is fixed. Okay.
Okay.
For every partition, we have defined LFP and UFP.
Right.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Now, for for proceeding further and proving some natural things, this is the first observation that if you take any two partitions, okay,
Okay, sir.
P1 and P2, these are just two partitions of AB in the partition in the type that we are discussing currently.
Right.
So suppose P1 is P0, P1 has is divides into K intervals, P0 to T1, T1 to T2, etc. So T0, T1, Tk.
Right.
P2 is dividing into M intervals, and we write those elements as S0, S1, Sm. So S0 to S1, S1 to S2, going on up to Sm minus 1 to Sm. So these are my two partitions.
Okay. Got it, sir.
Okay. Now the
Right.
point is that we can create another partition which is finer than these. That means which contains all these, both of these.
Right. Yeah, got it now, sir. Yeah. Yeah, got it, sir. Thank you.
So if P1 is contained in P, we will say that P is finer than P1, that it adds more points than P1. If the two are not comparable, it can happen that the two are not comparable, right? Suppose A equal to 0, B equal to 1, and P1 is equal to 0, half. So P1 there are, so K is 4, M is 3, and this is P1, this is P2. Now P1 and P2 are not comparable. P1 doesn't
Right.
compare,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
so now from this example, what we do is we simply add the points together and generate a new one. 0, 1/4, 1/3, half, 2/3, 3/4, and 1. I have already added and ordered them. So this will give you another partition.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, got it, sir. Yeah.
So when you have a partition, what is the notion of a finer partition? Finer partition means it is all this and more. We are not deleting anything, we are adding more points to it. That's it. That is finer partition. Okay. And given two partitions, we can always create another partition which is finer than both of them. Okay. So if we add more points, what happens to the upper bounds and lower bounds? Any guesses?
Sir, I think the upper bounds would decrease and the lower bounds would increase.
Yes. And the reason is we can now imagine the first part which I had showed. So in each interval, you are taking the infimum and supremum. Now, when you take a finer partition, what happens is each interval either stays as it is or it gets splits into two or more points, right? When it gets split, the upper bounds, the original upper bound could be high, and in each of the subsets, the upper bounds could be coming down. The lower bound, on the other hand, the subset, the lower bound can go up, And as a result, this one will follow. Now let us go back to the here. This becomes clear that if you partition Ti minus 1 to Ti into some more parts, supremum in each one will be smaller than overall supremum. And therefore, the claim thing that the upper bounds go down, and similarly opposite is the lower bound. Okay. So it is almost immediate that when you refine the partition, upper bounds come down, lower bounds go up. And you can work it out through examples also. Write down a function, write down the upper bounds, lower bounds for one partition, refine the partition, and then check what happens. Okay. So I'm claiming now that you take any two partitions, the lower bound on P1, lower approximation on P1 is less than or equal to the upper approximation on P2. Immediately it is not clear because you are defining it via partitions. First, let's see. For the same partition, it is obvious that the lower bound is less than or equal to the upper bound. Because this is summation Ti minus 1, summation Ti minus 1, same thing. And multiplier in one is an infimum over a set and it is supremum over the same set. So infimum over a set is less than or equal to supremum over the same set. Therefore, for the same partition P, LFP is less than or equal to UFP. But if partitions are different, for example, one of them is this 1/4 partition, 1/4, 2/4, etc. partition. The other one was 1/3, 2/3 kind of partition. Then immediately it is not clear as to how will we compare the two. Right? But this idea of refinement is so beautiful that to do this, all we have to do is get P refinement of P1 and P2. Then lower bound P1 will be less than or equal to lower bound P. As we had said, when we refine the partitions, lower bounds go up, upper bounds come down. So these two are things which we had noted. And once the partition is same, namely P, LFP is less than or equal to UFP. That gives you a proof of LFP1 less than or equal to LFP2. Any observation, question? So we have shown that you take any two partitions unrelated to each other, then LFP1 is less than equal to UFP2. And now let's fix a P2 and take supremum over all P1s, all partitions P1. Even maybe when you say all partitions, it will also include P2 there, but doesn't matter. So when we take supremum over all partitions P1, each of them is less than equal to UFP2. So the supremum will be less than equal to UFP2. So lower bound is less than equal to UFP2. Whatever P2 you take, LF is less than equal to UFP2. Now you take infimum over P2, and will get you that LF is always less than equal to UF. So here, what we have seen is that while we have defined the LF and UF as we will define, I have not yet defined here, maybe. And UF is the infimum over all partitions. Then because this is just by the definition. So we have seen that LF P1 less than equal to UF P2. So this is possible to write it as first taking supremum over P1 we get now taking infimum over P2, we get so the lower bound is always less than equal to upper bound.
So can you scroll up for a bit?
Scroll up.
Yes. Okay. So you're taking. Right now.
And our all partitions are always finite partitions. Okay. We are only considering finite partitions. All right.
Okay, so thank you. So let us go back to this definition step. Okay. You take a partition, you define UFP and LFP. So in each interval, the length of the interval times the largest, the supremum over all values and infimum over all values. Okay. So upper bound is length of the interval times supremum over all over that interval, and lower bound is length of an interval and infimum over that interval and summing over. That is LFP, UFP. Then we take supremum over all such partitions for lower bound and infimum over all such partitions for upper bound and call that LF and UF. And what we have is that LF is less than equal to UF. And there's some more notation here. This is also written with the integral sign, but with the bar below. So this is the lower integral. Lower bound for the integral. And
the definition sign is opposite, right? Like the lower integral is defined as the LF. The definition equality is opposite, right? Like the lower integral is defined as the LF.
just a minute. Let me finish this and I will go to what you are asking. Did I make a mistake in?
No, nothing. But no, in the last page only, like the lower integral is defined as LF, right?
Yeah, LF is the lower integral.
Okay. So
LF is the lower integral, UF is the upper integral.
So when you wrote UF, when you took UF, here you said taking infimum over P2.
I'm not sure why you're taking over P2 because UF is for all partitions, right?
Oh. Mm. See, okay, let us read this sentence again here. So firstly, you have here with P1 and P2, we have seen that UF P1 okay. Now, if you take supremum over P1, what happens? P2 is unchanged. So UFP2 remains UFP2. And when we take supremum over P1, LF, P1 becomes LF because lower bound is taken by taking supremum over partitions, right?
Shouldn't it be the supremum for all the partitions?
Yeah, so all supremum over P1 means over all partitions P1, yeah.
Oh, okay. We're not defining P1 as a particular partition.
No. P1 and P2 are just two arbitrary partitions to given.
Okay.
For any partitions P1 and P2, no relationship between them. Okay. So it looks like there's some confusion. Let me repeat. So let's go back to this example of P1 and P2. They are totally unrelated, right? And we have said that given any two which are unrelated, we can create a common partition, which is refinement for both of them. And then we try to show that if you have any two partitions, then LFP1 is less than equal to UFP2. And this was done by creating a common partition P, which kind of is in between the two, and then in turn that is itself so now if we define LF as the union over the supremum over all partitions of LF and UF as the infimum over all partitions UFP, that is the LF and UF. Now our aim here is to show that LF is less than equal to UF. So we first have that LFP1 is less than equal to LF for any partition P1, and LF is indeed the supremum over these. UF is infimum over P2s. Okay. We had already seen that LFP1 is less than equal to UFP2. So you take in supremum over P1 first, and then take infimum over P2. You will get LF less than equal to UF. So supremum over P1 means P1 is just a notation. This is supremum over P1 means supremum over all partitions. P1 is as just a variable in the equation above. Okay. Is this okay? Any more question? Any more confusion? So point is we are taking on one hand, lower bound and upper bound are defined. LF and UF are defined without any reference to each other. LF is defined as supremum over all lower bounds. UF is defined as infimum over all upper bounds. And lower bound and upper bound are first taken via finite partitions. So LF and UF are defined without any reference to each other. And yet we want to show that LF is always less than equal to UF. And that is what is the endeavor here, that we are able to connect LF P1 and UF P2 where P1 and P2 are unrelated, and that we achieve by taking a common partition, which is refinement of each of them. So the Riemann integrability is the notion that upper and lower integrals agree, and therefore that is the count, that is the integral. Okay. And we are going to prove next class that a continuous, if f is a continuous function, then upper and lower integrals agree. Okay. That will be our statement. We'll prove. But before that, let's get hold of examples where upper and lower bound don't agree. So define fx to be x if it is rational, and it is equal to minus x if it is irrational. Now, take a partition . So 1 by n partition. So there are n elements. Now, what happens is every interval There will be positives and there will be negatives, right? So for this partition, call it sub n. Can one guess what is the upper bound and what is the lower bound? The length of every interval, the length is only 1 over n. So that is summation 1 over n times. Now, supremum of this function in every interval, supremum between 1 by n and 2 by n, supremum between 2 by n and 3 by n. What is the supremum?
Those will be 2 by n,
Yes,
3 by n.
upper bounds. And what is the infimum?
K minus 1 by n.
Minus of k minus 1 by n.
Oh, yes.
If it were k minus 1 by n, it will become integrable. The upper and lower bounds will match. But this is minus because that is how I have defined it.
Sir, shouldn't it be minus k by n?
Yeah, you're right. There is no minus one. And now you can compute and get that the upper bounds and lower bounds are never going to agree. So what is each of the summation we can actually explicitly compute because there is a 1 by n square and then summation kk from 1 to n that gives you 1 by n square n into n plus 1 by 2, right? And n gets cancelled. This will converge to half and this will converge to minus half. So UF will be half and LF will be minus half. So every interval you take, there are points which are pluses, points which are minus, and then if they are close to 0, the difference is not much, but as you move towards 1, the difference keeps increasing. In most books, you will see a simpler problem where you define that fx is equal to 1 if irrational and 0 if rational. So the lower bound is always 0, upper bound is always 1. But just to give a twist, you could make it x minus x. 1 and 0 is not so important. So the point is, rational numbers are everywhere. You take any interval, there will be rational numbers, there will be irrational numbers. So you keep different rules of the definition of the f, one for rational and another for irrational. Then upper and lower bounds may agree, may not agree. It all depends on what are you are differentiating between the rationals and irrationals. Okay.
Sir, is there a subset of partition that if we prove the theorem for, if we prove a statement for that set of partition, it would be true for all partitions? Like, is there a set of such, like spanning all the partitions, some subset of partitions?
No. There is no such.
Okay, sir.
And true means what? If you can show that there is a partition at which both for that partition upper and lower bounds agree, then they will agree everywhere, no problem. But in most examples, you will not get any partition where they will agree. They can come close to each other, but may not agree.
Okay, sir.
Right? As I said, fx equal to x, if you take, you can't get any partition at which the upper and lower bounds will agree. No. So unless the function is such that it is piecewise constant, Only then you can get a partition where they will be equal. Upper and lower bounds for that partition will be equal. In general, no.
So I was talking about the subset of the family of partitions. I mean, I probably mispressed it.
But,
Like,
but then what do you mean by subset? What is the meaning by result being true for a family of subsets? No. I'm not getting your question then.
like we are when we show that a function is integrable, we will have to prove that it is the LF and UF are, that is LFP and UFP will be equal for all the partitions, right?
But they're not equal.
that is-
They're not equal.
No, to show integrability, Riemann integrability.
LF equal to UF, not LFP equal to UFP.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. And in fact, as I mentioned, what we are, so we are going, let me just say, we are going to prove two things. Okay, this is number one. Number two, one partition at which LFP and UFP differ by less than epsilon. Once it holds for this partition, then for any finer partition, the gap will be even lesser only. So we don't have to say there is a P1 such that P bigger than equal to P1 something happens. All that follows immediately. Normally in our limits with functions and so on, we have to say such that for all n bigger than equal to n naught or for all x between epsilon, delta, etc., etc. But here, because there is already a inbuilt thing kind of monotonicity built in, we have that as soon as you produce one P, then it follows that for any refinements also it continues to be close. So
So P1's superset of P or P1 subset of P. Right?
no, superset of P. For anything which is refinement of P.
Sir, so
Okay.
it's failing. However small we choose the partition, the supremum and infimum will not be arbitrarily close together.
No, wait. What is your statement? I didn't understand.
I mean, in this case, it is failing because even if we choose the partition to be very small, the infimum and supremum are not coming close to each other, like arbitrary small to each other.
You mean the example of this one?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
that's right.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to leave you with an example, with an exercise, which you should try and work out that right, you know the square bracket x means the integer part of x or the largest integer less than equal to x, or whichever way you define. Okay. But you all understand what it means. You just remove the decimal parts, only the whole integer part. So this is the example. This is not a continuous function, right?
No,
So now you prove that UF equal to LF. That is the exercise. Think about it. So it is not that only continuous functions we can deal with in Riemann integral. No, we can deal with more. Okay. So you think about this, we will see on Friday. So our main things are to show that for continuous LF is UF, they are equal, it is Riemann integrable. And then we have to show things like what happens to sum of two Riemann integrable functions and so on and so forth. So sum and multi, so linear multipliers multiplying by a constant function, and then therefore taking a linear combination of two Riemann integrable functions, what happens? All such things we will do, but just that we are not only limited to continuous functions, we can do more. One example, say this one. Okay.
But this is also piecewise continuous. Is there any function that is not piecewise continuous and still remain integrable?
Yeah, they will be, but it gets more and more complicated to define them and to prove those things, right? Yeah. So going beyond that, then what are these? What are the departures from continuity? What are the discontinuity points? Are they themselves limit? Are they dense? All such questions come. Lots of those. And instead of I mean, lot of time must have been spent on this. But today the modern approach is you do basics of this, and then when need arises, you want to go up, you can go up by doing Lebesgue theory, Lebesgue integral. That you will do maybe none of the core courses, it will be done probably, but either optional course here or optional in masters, or core in masters, depending on what masters you are doing. The Lebesgue integral. Yeah. Anything more? Anyone likes to ask? All right then.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.